Whether you're willing to admit it or not, Black Ops 6 is one of the best CoD titles in recent memory. I'm not saying it's an all-time great, but when you look at the inconsistency of releases from multiple developers since even before COVID, it's hard to say that BO6 isn't a standout release. Setting aside the fact that it's easy to say that a game is better than some of the apathetic releases we've seen like Vanguard and MW2 2022, you have to admit that Black Ops 6 was clearly better. Look, I'm not saying it was perfect at launch, honestly far from it, especially as someone who primarily snipes, but given that we're nearing the end of the life cycle, I think it's a great time to reflect on everything we've gotten from the last year. For starters, most people in the CoD community strictly play the game mode they like. Sweats play multiplayer, zombie players love going for high rounds, Warzone players do whatever they do I guess, but not a lot of love is shown for campaign players. The community doesn't really talk about the missions, it's kind of an afterthought as soon as the game is launched by the developers, but I think this is one of the brightest spots for Black Ops 6 that seems to go unrecognized. From start to finish, this was probably the best campaign we've gotten since MW 2019. It was engaging, provided plenty of differentiating mission types and settings. The characters were somewhat memorable, but there were multiple missions that have stuck with me even until now, with one possibly cementing itself as a top 5 CoD mission of all time. If you know, you know. Not to mention there was plenty of replayability like the upgrade system within the safe house. I played through the campaign on normal just to experience the narrative, but if you don't want to spend your time on multiplayer modes and prefer a single player experience, then this gave you the option to grind challenges, making runs on the hardest difficulties a little more manageable. If you haven't given the single player experience a try, I highly recommend it, especially if the rest of the game feels dull to you. You can clear the story in less than 10 hours, making it very approachable even if it's not your typical way to play CoD. Multiplayer is always tough to judge because every year a CoD releases, players are quick to compare it to their favorite titles. For me, it's hard to beat the amount of fun that the golden era of CoDs brought me between CoD 4, MW2, and Black Ops 2. I think that will always be the benchmark, which is hard to beat, especially when you take into account the nostalgia that comes with those games. I don't think I have as much of a pessimistic view as the rest of the community, who likes to constantly complain every year about the game they put hundreds of hours in rather than just trying to enjoy something fresh. For me, the addition of Omni Movement was a massive step forward for the franchise, and going back to MW3 feels sluggish and honestly kind of clunky. Even though you could slide cancel in other titles and run around like a crackhead, the movement honestly feels better in Black Ops 6 given the fact that you can sprint in all directions and slide wherever you want. As for sniping, which is my primary playstyle, it was in a really terrible spot at the beginning of the year. But after numerous tweaks and buffs, it's one of the smoothest feels we've had in a very long time. We've gotten multiple DLC snipers helping to keep the multiplayer experience fresh, and we have variety so that we're not just stuck using one single sniper. As for maps, there aren't any major standouts that I get super excited to play, but for the most part I feel like I can enjoy games on most maps. The inclusion of the face-off playlist has been a nice change since we hadn't had it since Cold War, and it allows for easy camo grinding and just trying to hit ridiculous clips. Bullet would be a perfect example of this, where Treyarch threw all map design out the window and just made one single file line for everyone to line up, which is honestly a ton of fun. I do appreciate that most of the maps aren't large scale, and so the flow of combat typically finds itself in the middle versus the outskirts. But again, I doubt we'll see BO6 maps being hyped up for remasters in future titles because they're not as memorable as prior games in the franchise. I'd be remiss to talk about multiplayer without mentioning some of the unresolved issues that plagued players this year, namely the cheating. Multiple times we were told Treyarch was fixing the anti-cheat just for it to continue to be a problem even until this day. It's essentially rendered competitive playlists unplayable, meaning people who want to grind their ranks have to go to other titles like Siege and CS2 just to scratch that itch. It's honestly such a shame because having one of the largest multiplayer shooters have a ranked playlist that nobody even tries to compete in because of cheaters is honestly an embarrassment for such a large company like Activision. I've been preaching about the need to get this fixed, as I know a lot of the people in the community have also, so to see it still be an issue is disrespectful to the player base. Again, I know that CoD players like to complain, but this has felt like a proper Zombies experience from day one, especially as someone who first played Zombies after the credits rolled in World at War. So when I hear everybody talking about how bad it is, the lack of content, I just can't agree. I've seen it from the beginning and continually say this is the most fun I've had on a CoD outside of multiplayer in a very long time, and that's because of Zombies. I appreciate that Activision tried to implement MWZ in previous titles to switch everything up, but going back to the round-based roots makes the most sense. We've gotten a map almost every season, ranging in sizes and lore, with new wonder weapons and some returning as well. It's been an absolute blast to try to find the best strategies to complete Easter eggs, camo farm, and complete the Dark Ops calling cards. The last few years for me have been so focused on multiplayer content that having another avenue to create videos, especially within zombies, which I love, has been so refreshing. I haven't found myself playing too many of the limited time modes, but the fact that they are consistently releasing new ways to interact with zombies shows that they care about the players and are trying to keep it fresh. I do feel like Grief missed the mark when it comes to bringing a somewhat competitive side to zombies, but I think that could easily be fixed if rounds of Grief took less time. I don't have enough time to jump in for an hour-and-a-half long round of Grief every time I play. Sometimes I just want to jump on for 30 minutes to click some heads, so playing Grief is almost a non-starter unless my whole night is wide open. I'm not going to speak on Warzone given that it's essentially been siloed off from the overall yearly release cadence, but I think it's pretty clear to everyone that the popularity of Warzone is gone and the support for this mode is no longer what it used to be. I do feel bad for the player base given how popular it used to be and the fact that it brought so many players back into the community. Verdansk was a last-ditch effort to bring all those OG Warzone players back, which seemed like it worked for a week or two, but then quickly lost its luster. If they had brought back the original servers and allowed everyone to relive those peak COVID times, I think they would have seen the concurrent player base remain elevated rather than quickly spiking and then slowly falling back down. Overall, I'm pretty happy with Black Ops 6 as a whole, especially when compared to other games like Vanguard and MW2 2022, which felt like throwaway games just to release on the yearly cycle. Black Ops 6 had a long development cycle, and I think that definitely paid off, and I'm hoping the same can be said about Black Ops 7. If you want to see a full breakdown of my thoughts of the Black Ops 6 single player campaign, check out the video on the left. Check out the playlist on the right if you're interested in zombies content.